Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Dole Institute. I want to recognize Mrs. Santos, who is with us here today, and members of the party who are traveling with the President. Welcome to the Dole Institute and the University of Kansas. I thank you for being here today for this special event featuring a very special guest who will be interviewed by Bill Lacy, director of the Dole Institute of Politics. Part of the mission of the University of Kansas is to lift students and society by educating leaders. Leaders such as Bob Dole, who created this institute to promote public service, or Kathleen Sebelius, who serves our nation in the President's cabinet. Today, we are joined by another such leader, a man who, after graduating from KU, has gone on to serve his nation in its highest office. Juan Manuel Santos graduated from the University of Kansas in 1973 with degrees in economics and business. He first served the people of Colombia as a journalist and deputy director of the newspaper El Tiempo. Entering government, he held a series of increasingly important positions, including Colombia's first foreign trade minister, finance minister, and defense minister. He created the Good Government Foundation in 2005, founded what has become Colombia's largest political party. In 2010, he was elected president of the Republic of Colombia, receiving 9 million votes, the most of any candidate in the history of Colombian democracy. I visited President Santos last year in Bogota and invited him to return to his alma mater because of his ascent to the presidency of Colombia began in part here on Mount Oriet. At least that's what we're telling. I knew that his story could serve as an example for our students, all of whom come to KU seeking to become leaders in their own right. I was thrilled when President Santos accepted our invitation and so pleased that many of our students had the chance to meet him this morning. It is also my pleasure to introduce him to you today. Please join me in welcoming the President of the Republic of Colombia, Juan Manuel Santos.
Thank you all for coming out today for this very historic day. The President's the first sitting head of state to visit the Dole Institute, so we're delighted that you could join us today, Mr. President. Let's start this afternoon by, let me ask you about your childhood and your upbringing right before you get to college. What was that like?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Bill, and thank you all very much for this opportunity. I must confess, I'm very moved by this experience after 40 years being again in my alma mater, my university, and Madam Chancellor, this university has been not what you say, it's the truth. A very important part of my career was made here, made in KU, and has helped me tremendously throughout all these years, and is helping me still as President of Colombia. I am grateful for that, and grateful for this town. Lawrence was a small town. When I was here, it's grown, but the university, it's grown also, but the fundamentals are still there, and that's what is important. My youth, I was brought up in a family that has been dedicated to public service and to journalism. As a matter of fact, the reason why I came to KU, and I'll tell you that story a bit later, was because of my family's background in journalism. I went to a British school, to an American school, and then I went to the Navy, and I served in the Navy for 2.5 years, and after that, I decided to continue my career in the civil side of public of life, and I chose to come to KU. I spent 6 months at the University of Los Andes in Colombia, and then came here directly to McCollum Hall as a freshman. Then I was 2 years at the fraternity where I went this morning, DU, Delta Upsilon. My last year was I spent it in an apartment, so I had the whole life, the whole student life, and I repeat, my experience here has been extremely helpful. That's where you, during your university life, you consolidate those principles, those values, experiences that you have as a student that will then eventually give you the instruments to be successful in life. And those instruments are, again, I repeat with pride, made in KU.
What was some of your memorable experiences that you had here? Take a moment just to tell about a couple things stories that really stand out to you about your time at KU.
There's so many stories. Well, first of all, at that time, the student union was very rich, or at least they pretended to be very rich, and they brought the best bands in the whole country. And I remember very well, I used to go to the concerts of the very famous James Taylor, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, the Jefferson Airplanes, you name it, they came here. And that was a great experience personally. I improved my ability to play poker. At the fraternity, some of my fraternity brothers are here, and they were sometimes victims, or I was a victim. But I remember something very special. The first car I had in my life was bought here as a student, and it was a combination of. I remember I was in the business school, and I invested in a small enterprise called Pizza Hut. At that time was over the counter. So I went here to Lawrence, and I said I want to put some money that I had earned from my poker games, and the stock went up, and I was able to buy a car for the first time in my life. So I started my business side, but living in the fraternity was a great experience. It's an experience that taught me, and not only the fraternity, living in Lawrence, living in KU, taught me to appreciate and to admire the United States, the American way of life, your strong commitment to certain values, freedom, democracy, and this has been present in my mind and in my heart throughout all this time. And I can tell you some anecdotes. For example, I have here a senator from my country. I invited him to come here because he's also a KU graduate. He graduated a PhD in psychology, and he saved my life. He saved my life once because we were in a party, and I was flirting with a very beautiful girl, and he came to me and said, "You must leave now." I said, "Why?" "This is the girlfriend of the fullback of the football team." And so I went because he was already furious. Well, all those experiences that you have in a university, they're all good memories. Of course, my professors, everything that KU has to offer, that still has to offer, made a great impression in the formation of my character and my education.
Very good. At what point did you decide to get into public service and politics, and why?
Well, my family has always been directly or indirectly involved in public service. Even from my independence, one of the heroines of our independence was my great grand uncle, great grand aunt. My great uncle was president of Colombia between 1938 and 1942. He became a very close ally of the U.S. in the war. My family founded a newspaper 101 years ago, and so I sort of lived and was raised in this atmosphere of politics, public service, journalism. They were very much interrelated. After I graduated, I went to work with the Coffee Federation. I was an economist, and I did a master's degree in postgraduate work at the London School of Economics, and I stayed living in London for about 8 years. And I was drafted by my family to work in journalism. And I had an experience which I want to share with you. After 8 years as deputy publisher of the newspaper, and I was going to be the publisher, I went to have an exam made, and they diagnosed incorrectly that I might had cancer. And I was shocked, and I started sort of thinking, and there was an advice that my grandfather used to give me, says, you must, it doesn't matter if you're sorry for the things you did, but don't feel sorry for the things you could have done and you did not do. And I remember saying, I didn't really like journalism. I liked to be in the action, with politics. And at that time, by pure coincidence, I was offered the job of, after the doctor said, I'm sorry, it was a mistake, don't worry. I was offered a job as Minister of Trade, which was a new ministry, because at that time, Colombia had a very closed economy. They decided to open, and it was a big responsibility. So I said, this is really what I like. And so I jumped into public service, and I've been in public service since then. That was back in 1990.
Well, you've also served, in addition to being Minister of Foreign Trade, as Minister of Finance and Minister of Defense. Talk a little bit about how those three roles work in Colombia.
Well, I by coincidence, had to do very particular jobs, very special jobs. As Minister of Trade, I had to open the economy. This is something completely new. I started negotiating free trade agreements, but I needed to build the institutions that would back our new foreign trade policy. And so I created a bank, a foreign trade bank, and an institution to promote exports, and all the competitiveness, how to promote the competition, and what that implied. As Minister of Finance, that was another very interesting experience. My country is going through a tremendous crisis, probably the worst crisis in the last 100 years, economic and political crisis. There was a governability crisis. The president did not have the majority in Congress, and we had to take some very tough reforms. And he sent part of his cabinet to ask me if I would join the government. I came from another party, different from the president at that time, and I said, in what capacity? What do you want me to do? He said, whatever you want. And I said, my God. And so I went to some friends to say, look what happened. This is an opportunity. And they said, you're a risk taker. High risk, high return, which is the worst, the most difficult situation right now. I said, well, the economic situation, financial situation. So choose that. And so I chose to become finance minister. Everybody thought I was suicidal because we had to take very tough decisions. They used to burn my picture in every single town in Colombia. And my kids were very small at that time, and they asked me, Dad, I see on television that they're burning your picture. And I said to them, don't worry, the smoke goes up to God, and it's an honor that they're giving me now. And anyway, we took very tough decisions. We managed to get through Congress with some very, very tough reforms that today, in today's financial situation worldwide, we are one of the darlings of the investors all around the world. Our spreads are lower than most of the countries in Europe. And so we had a big success there, but it was difficult at that time, but it taught me how important it is to take tough decisions that are necessary, and that afterwards you will benefit from the results. And as defense minister, I was appointed also in a very particular moment in our history. I served in the Navy. I was the first civilian defense minister to have served in the military in our history. That helped me tremendously, starting with the fact that I knew how to march, and that was very important. We have been going through almost 50 years of internal war, internal conflict, with some very tough guerrilla groups. At that time, we were having success, but we had not been able to really strike at them in where it hurt. And so what I did was a complete re-engineering of the way the military worked, especially from the intelligence. And what I did was exactly the contrary of what the United States did, sorry to say. It's getting the whole of the intelligence community together, and instead of competing one with the other, sharing the information and creating synergies. And that made a tremendous difference, and we started knocking them, the leaders of these groups, one after the other, and weakening them, and we sort of changed the whole strategy, the whole doctrine, security doctrine, and we have had a tremendous success there, to the extent that today, as president, having been signaled as I don't know what the word in English is, verdugo, the one that chops people's head in
Yes, executioner.
the executioner of the FARC. I now, today, I'm starting a peace program with them, a peace process, to see if we can negotiate the termination of the conflict. So it's because when you fight a war for a purpose, not for the sake of fighting. You fight a war with an objective. And since the beginning, I knew that the objective was to try to consolidate peace in my country. After 50 years, we've been killing each other for 50 years. And I hope that next time I come to KU, I can say we achieved this very important objective in my country, is to have peace.
Okay. One of your policies that I was very interested in, I thought folks would love to hear about it, is your effort to encourage more young Colombians to attend higher education or to be trained for jobs. Talk a little bit about what you're trying to do there.
Well, education is something which is so fundamental to any country's development that any sensible head of state will have to put education as one of the top priorities. And we've been trying to do that. With my wife, who's here with me, we started a program giving a lot of importance to education between the moment you're born and up to 6 years old. That's when the children learn how to learn, and they sort of acquire the fundamental capacities to learn. In Colombia and most of the developing countries, that has been a neglected part of the education. And we even brought one of the Nobel Prize winners from the University of Chicago who went there and said the most important development investment you can make socially is to give more importance to the young infancy, what they call it. Then basic and primary and basic education. This year, 1st of January of this year, I signed a decree giving free education to every single Colombian that wants to go to primary and basic education. But we have a tremendous bottleneck after you graduate from high school. We don't have enough universities and enough technical programs, but also people don't have the money to pay for universities, and part of the universities are public and are free, but not all of them. So there's a tremendous challenge there, and what we've been trying to do is to give scholarships around the country to the most needed, and open up technical schools all around the country, and try to break that bottleneck, because in many countries that age between 18 and 24, 25 is the age, if you don't have the students or that young people, men or women, studying or doing something productive, that's when they become delinquents or drug addicts or whatever. And so we're doing a tremendous effort in that area. We have to, there's a long way to go, but we're making that a priority.
Tell us a little bit about one of the first acts that you won passage of last year, the Victims and Land Restitution Act. What was the purpose behind that?
Well, when I was fighting these guerrilla groups, making war is much easier than making peace. Making war is even exhilarating, and you achieve certain victories, and you feel very proud. Of course, it's part of the rules of the game. But since then, I said, we've been at war for so many years. We need to start thinking about peace. And but in order to achieve that peace, you must be strong militarily. Again, as I said minutes ago, you make war to achieve peace. You don't make war for the sake of war. And since then, I said, I felt how deep the wounds after 50 years of accumulating violence we had in our society. So I said, when I became president, I said, we need to start healing those wounds if we really want peace. So I put in place or I presented to Congress a very audacious piece of legislation that allowed me to start repairing victims of the conflict in the middle of the conflict, and start giving back to the peasants the land that was taken away from them by the violence. That's what we started. It was such an audacious piece of legislation that the Secretary General of the UN went to Colombia in the signing of this piece of legislation, and it's part of the process of creating the environment for peace. If we are able to end the conflict by an agreement with these groups, this is a component. It's a necessary condition, a fundamental condition, but it's not enough. You need to build a much stronger environment through social policies, through fighting against poverty, through policies that will decrease the tremendous inequalities that we have in our country. So it's a whole strategy that has many components. One of the fundamental components is this law to repair the victims and to restitute land to the peasants.
One of your objectives also, Mr. President, has been to work on and improve the Colombian infrastructure. What steps have you taken on that, and how much success have you had?
Well, infrastructure has been one of those areas where, for many, many years, the presidents that preceded me in this office, when they had to sacrifice something from their budgets, they say, well, the least expensive in political terms is infrastructure. So we have been accumulating a situation of backwardness in terms of infrastructure. And if we want to be a sustainable, growing economy, we need good infrastructure. And I read, I am very fond of biographies, and I've read many biographies of Teddy Roosevelt and his New Deal and what he did with the infrastructure in this country. Not only did he win the war, but he is in many places remembered by the investments in infrastructure that he made. We decided in the government, say, let's really make a big step here. The problem was our financial situation. How do we pay for that, and how can we do that with a sensible fiscal situation for our public finances? So we started sort of being creative, and we came up with a formula that will allow us, and it's now in place, it's working, to increase the investment in infrastructure using private investors and foreign investors that will allow us to go from 3, to give you a sort of magnitude of numbers to show you difference. From between 3 and 5 billion pesos, we're going up to 40 billion pesos. So it's about 20 times more. And there's a tremendous job there, the tremendous opportunity there, where we win and the investors win, because with today's economic situation around the world, many of the engineering companies, big engineering companies, are seeking work all around the world. And Colombia is one of the few economies that is growing very fast, and we need that infrastructure. So the conditions sort of were put together, and we're doing a tremendous effort in modernizing our infrastructure.
Talk a little bit about what kind of opportunities that Midwestern or United States companies have to do business in Colombia.
Well, I met the head and the top executives of a company that is based here in Topeka, Payless shoes. And I said to them, well, great to have you, to meet you. And they said, well, we already have 32 stores in Colombia, 32 stores, or even more, 50 stores. And I said, my God, and what are you planning to do? Well, we're going to open up 30 more. So that gives you an example of the opportunities. Colombia is a country that is growing. The last figure that we had was 4.9%, and last year we grew 5%. It's a young population. We're taking people out of poverty, so they're going to be consumers of all kinds of goods. We have energy. We have biodiversity. We have water, which is an increasingly scarce resource. We have a lot of land to increase the production of food in a world that is starting to have a food crisis. We just became the third largest economy in Latin America. We surpassed Argentina in terms of in economic GNP terms and per capita income. And this is something which shows you that Colombia is a rising star, and what we need is investment. The global competition today is not as much as access to the markets, is investment, because that's what creates jobs and what produces prosperity. And so the Midwestern companies that have had a success here in the US market or in the Midwestern market should explore, like we are exploring. Many of our medium and small companies are coming to the United States. We now have a free trade agreement, United States and Colombia. And seeing Senator Dole, he helped us a lot with this free trade agreement, and I appreciate that very much. This is a tremendous opportunity for both countries. It's a win-win situation. And Colombia is a very interesting market, 46, 47 million people. And we need the investment, so there's tremendous opportunities with a much more closer relationship between the Midwest and Colombia, because there's not a lot of knowledge both ways. Colombia doesn't know very much what Kansas looks like, and the people from Kansas don't know very much what Colombia looks like. But if we get to know each other better, I tell you, because of a personal experience, we would like each other much better, and we can create a lot of synergies together.
How did you come, Mr. President, to make the decision to run for president? That's a very personal decision when you run for any elective office, the highest elective office in your nation. How did you make that decision? When did you make the decision, and why did you want to do that?
Sometimes I say, why did I do this? It's a response that's not easy to make with a sort of exact descriptions. It's a process. I was doubting very much since I entered public office. It's natural that anybody who goes into public service wants to be president. This is something like you get to the top. I had periods where I said I want to do it. Others where I said no, it's not worth it, or even sometimes doubting about your own ability. But after the experience I had as a minister of the three areas where I was minister, and the opportunity presented itself when my predecessor wanted to run again for office, but the Constitutional Court said, no, you ran twice, third time is not possible. And I was sort of the ideal candidate, and things sort of stars aligned, and I said, well, I want to do it, and also because many times when you're a minister, you have certain degree of freedom to do things that you want, but at the end it's the president who takes the decisions. And you're completely free to do whatever you think you should do, is only when you have nobody on top of you. And I think what we have done in the last 2 years proves that a lot of things that I wanted to do for a long time that I've been able to do or I'm trying to do, and I think this is extremely satisfying. Sometimes you make mistakes, sometimes you fail, but if at the end the pluses are above the minuses, then you can go to your grave satisfied with what you did.
Do you care, Mr. President, to make a re-election announcement here this afternoon on campus?
No, thank you, no.
I kind of figured that's what you would say. We're going to open up to, I have one last question, then we're going to open up to Q&A from the audience, and we'll do about 20 minutes or so of that. So I know I've got 3 members of my staff who have microphones. Hopefully they're making their way out so that we'll be ready to go. But Mr. President, my last question for you today is you had to make some real tough decisions, especially as Minister of Defense, in regard to the internal conflict in your country. Do you think that having been very tough and having made those very tough decisions then kind of makes you in a much stronger position to go and try to bring peace to your country?
Yes, definitely. I will share with you one of the very tough decisions I had to make. When I started my government, we started having messages with the enemy. Would you be interested in having a possible conversation here and there? And the person who indirectly I communicated with was the number one, their leader. At the same time, I said I would be interested provided we have 2 very clear conditions. First, completely confidential until we both decide to make it public. And second, there's no contemplation whatsoever in the political speeches or whatever, or how you refer to each other, or at least from us to them, in the judicial area and in the military. In other words, the war continues with no contemplations whatsoever. And he was my, in a way, interlocutor. And I had given orders to take all these people out, especially the high-value targets. And I was confronted with a very difficult decision. We have him surrounded. What do we do? And I said, the rules are the rules. We must, if we want to be successful, we have to be very clear on the rules of the game and persevere. And I had to take the decision to take him out, and we took him out. Those are the type of decisions that are extremely difficult, but I am certain that that is one of the reasons why we are sitting down in 2 weeks in Oslo, in Norway, to talk about peace.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, we're ready for Q&A from the audience. If you have a question, please raise your hand, wait for one of the cordless mics. Please ask a brief question, no statements.
Good morning, Mr. President. It's a pleasure that you are here. I'm Silvana Otero from Colombia, and I have a question for you. Please tell me a headline that you would write in El Tiempo to describe your relationship with Álvaro Uribe right now.
You're a student from where? From the William Allen White School of Journalism? I would say it's a good from me, from this side towards to my predecessor. There's no ill will. I am a bit frustrated by him not understanding what we're trying to do.
Okay, next question. Okay, Susan?
Hi, Mr. President. Norman Haas. I'm the importer of premium Colombian chocolate, actually probably the largest importer of premium Colombian chocolate in the United States, here in the Midwest, by the way. And I'm curious, as the ninth largest producer of cacao in the world, Colombia is, do you see any opportunity to replace the coca that's been sort of the scourge of the land there with cacao? Because as you give this land back to the farmers, isn't there some kind of program where you can help them grow cacao, which is, I mean, it's world famous. It's a fantastic product. Let's get the bad product out and let's get a wonderful product planted instead. Any plans for that?
Yes, and I would say this is a program that we're already starting, and there's a tremendous potential to do that. Not only cacao, but many products that are needed in the world markets today. As I mentioned, the world is starting to have a food crisis. Who's going to feed millions of Chinese and Indians and Indonesians that are demanding more and more food? And Colombia is one of the 8 countries in the world that has been signaled as countries with tremendous potential to increase the production of food. And you mentioned how to replace the coca plantations that produce the cocaine that poisons the young people here in the United States and all around the world, with cacao, which is a delicious chocolate that we had with the Chancellor, delicious dessert today made out of chocolate. It's a big difference, and we want that. And one of the reasons, one of the points in the agenda with the FARC that we introduced was precisely the issue of drug trafficking. If they decide to become a part of the institutional framework of the country and become ally and not defenders of drug trafficking, the U.S., Colombia, and the whole world is going to win a lot. And if we have alternative production, cacao or other products, this is a win-win situation for everybody. We are already doing that in many areas in Colombia, and we plan and hope to do that in all the areas of Colombia, to continue eradicating the production of coca, of the primary product of cocaine. We have been able to reduce that by more than 50% of what we had some years ago, and we need to reduce it to 0 if possible.
Right here.
Mr. President, thank you for being here. One of the most fascinating things to me about your program for peace is not only your toughness, but the fact that you have agreed to allow the rebels, if they incorporate into the peace program, to become part of a public government, to be elected. Could you tell us a little bit about how that came about and what provided you the strength to permit a former enemy to rejoin the political process in your country?
Well, first of all, we haven't taken that specific decision yet. This is part of what we're negotiating. It's part of what we call transitional justice. There are some some very important philosophical, moral, political decisions and discussions in any society. Things like, where do you establish the limit between the collective interest and the individual rights? More recently, where do you establish the line between the role of the state and the role of the markets? In any conflict, in any process to resolve a conflict, the most difficult decision is, where do you put the limit between justice and peace? If you ask a victim that question, they will always answer, we want more justice, because he has been a victim. If you ask the same question to a future victim, they will always say, we want more peace. What does more peace mean? Is sacrificing the punishment or the justice, and being able to say, I forgive you. But that's where transitional justice comes into the scenery. You need some principles. You need the victims to be repaired. You need the truth. Sometimes simply by knowing the truth, it sort of liberates you from the hate that you feel, and also some kind of punishment. What kind of punishment? The transitional justice allows what they call alternative punishment. You don't have to go to jail. So those are the type of questions that have to be answered by a society that wants to end the conflict and have peace. And this is exactly the discussions we're starting at this moment. Where do we draw the line? I have no doubt that when we take the final decision, there will be people on both extremes that will be not satisfied. The people who would like more justice says this is unacceptable, and people who want more peace would say this is unacceptable. But if the big majority of the country takes a decision, and I hope it will, and if we negotiate a good agreement, then that's the only solution that we have.
Okay, we have a question in the back.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. I believe at the meeting earlier this year in Cartagena, some Latin American leaders had expressed an interest in changes to current U.S. policy and international policy toward illegal drugs. And I just wondered if you could maybe characterize some of those sentiments and speak to what advantages those changes might have.
Well, it was me who proposed that discussion, and I will tell you what I'm trying to achieve. Colombia has been probably the country that has paid the highest cost in this war on drugs, out of any country in the world. Our best judges, our best politicians, our best policemen, our best journalists have been killed. Thousands of people, and the violence that this has generated, there's no other country that has suffered more. We have been relatively successful because we united at a certain moment and said we cannot be dominated by these drug cartels and those big cartels that were very famous in the 80s and in the 90s have disappeared, and the big famous drug lords are all killed or in jail. The last of the big ones, as a matter of fact, we caught him last week. The last of the big ones. And we have been able to reduce the amount, as I mentioned, of land under cultivation of coca, and we have hit the whole chain of drug trafficking extremely hard. The number of tons of coke that have been seized, and the assets, and we have been, again, I say, relatively successful. At the same time, our success has meant that the problems around the region have increased. Central America is having a tremendous problem. Mexico is having a tremendous problem. You see consumption going up in Europe. You see the West African countries now becoming more and more involved in drug trafficking. Consumption in the US, some people say it's going up, others say it's static, but the problem still is there. The amount, for example, of people in jail here in the US, simply by the reason of being involved in some way with the drug trafficking, is enormous. You have more people in jail in the American jails than the whole population of prisoners of the whole of Europe. How much does that cost? So what I said is, and in Colombia, even that we've been successful, we sometimes feel that we're like in a static bicycle. You pedal, but you don't advance. And so I said, is it not time to start seeing this with other eyes, analyzing if what we're doing is the correct thing, and if it's the correct thing, what is it that we're not doing correct because the problem is still there and it's growing? Or are there other better alternatives that for a society would be less costly than what we are doing? And let's open up the discussion without that common prejudice that this highly sensible political discussion creates, because you immediately, and I've seen it in my country and I've seen it in other countries, this is an issue that polarizes society immediately. People go, oh, you are proposing the legalization of drugs. No, how awful. No, nobody is proposing any legalization of drugs. Simply let's discuss the issues and see if we can find together, because no country by itself can win this war on drugs. We have to have a multilateral, an international position. So that's what I propose to the 32 leaders that were at this summit in Colombia. And I must say that all of them said this is a sensible thing to do. We named, or we established the OAS as the sort of the organization that will conduct this study to be an objective study, a scientific study without the political ingredient. And then if they have alternatives, let's discuss them. But not doing nothing, adopting the ostrich attitude of this is a problem that we should not discuss because it's too sensible politically, it's not the way to correct these type of problems. So that's what I proposed, and I must say all the leaders, including President Obama, had the courage to say, we are interested in discussing it. That does not commit anybody to any solution, but to at least open up the discussion, I think it's a very good step forward.
We have a question right here.
Yes. President Santos, this is John Hayes from the DU House in 1970. I would like to inquire what your medical facilities are. How I have MS. Are they currently doing any stem cell research in your country? In Medellin, I believe, is your medical research center. And I would like to know if that's anything is going on there at this time.
I remember you were a very good basketball player, but I didn't quite understand the question. Medical,
Medical research.
Yeah, stem cell research.
stem cell.
Yes, sir.
I have my brother-in-law. He's a doctor now. How do I answer that? Yeah, we are doing research in Medellin on that, and my personal position, regards to that research, I'm open to it.
Okay, we have a question in the back.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. I'm Alexander Stanley, a current KU senior and also a brother of the Delta Upsilon fraternity. I was wondering if, while you were in attendance at KU, whether or not you held any leadership positions, whether that be on campus or in your fraternity, and if so, how did that shape the leader you are today?
Quite frankly, no. I was not a leader in any respect. I was a common student, struggling with my grades, trying to be a good student, trying to be a good fraternity member at the DU. I was very disciplined. It was a very interesting time. I remember the Vietnam War was on. There was passionate discussions about all these issues, and participating in those issues helped me a lot to see the different point of view, the dilemmas that for a student, many of my my companions. I remember the partner that I had at McCollum Hall. He had to go to Vietnam, and that was an experience that helped me a lot. But no, the answer to your question is no. I was not a special leader of any sort during my years here in KU.
Okay, we have time for one last question. Do we have a question here?
Juan, my name is Joe Spees. We used to go to parties together through your friend Maru Angarita. Do you remember Maru? By the way, for those of you here, she is a KU grad who was part of the first democratically elected president in Venezuela. And we used to have lots of good political discussions back in the day. My question for you involves energy policy in Colombia. My company is developing the most important energy technologies of the future. I've been in China to promote and develop them there. And I'd like to have you just talk about energy policy and if renewable energy is part of that you're considering at this time.
Certainly. Colombia is a very energy-rich country. We have lots of water, and so we have a lot of hydraulic energy. Almost 50% of what we produce is hydro produced energy. We have coal, very clean coal, second exporters in the world of coal. We have oil, and discovering more and more oil. But we are certainly interested in developing alternative energy and new sources of energy. We apparently have one of the ideal situations for aeolic energy, the one that is produced by wind. Since Colombia is in the top north of South America, the wind there is ideal for that. The problem has been that since we can produce such low-cost energy with our hydro, that the technology still is too expensive to justify that type of energy in Colombia. Same thing happens with the solar energy. We have sun all year round. We could develop solar energy, but still too expensive to compete with our hydro. But of course, we need to develop new energies. We're starting with cracking, but we have a big question mark of the effect of that in our environment and our water resources. We don't know enough in order to see if we stimulate that or not. But any other sources of energy are more than welcome, and you're more than welcome to go to Colombia and explore that. That's what we need. We need technology, we need investment, we need foreign investors. We consider foreign investment as a necessary part of our development. We treat foreign investors as our partners. If they do well, we do well. And so you will find a friendly country to your investment in Colombia.
Mr. President, thank you so much for a wonderful discussion. I'm asked, please everyone, stay in your seats until after the traveling party departs today. We'll let you know when you can leave. But for the purpose of a very important presentation, it's my great honor to introduce Dean Danny Anderson. Danny, come on up.
Thank you, Bill, for being here. I have a microphone on my lapel, so I think everyone can hear me. It is a real pleasure. No? You're fine. Can you hear me now? It is a pleasure to be here to present you with the Alumni Distinguished Achievement Award from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. I am here with Tony Arnold. He is the chair of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences Advisory Board. The Distinguished Achievement Award is the highest honor that the college bestows on any of its graduates. The award has been sitting here throughout the ceremony. This is a Jayhawk based on a statue by Eldon Teft. The iconic Jayhawk that stands in front of Strong Hall was sculpted by him, as well as the statue of Moses in front of our School of Religion. And it is a pleasure to present this to you. And I'd like for you to remember three things about it. One, it is a symbol of the pride that we have in all that you have accomplished as a leader. Two, we hope that you will remember our wishes for your success in peace as you move forward in Colombia. And finally, your favorite word is persevere. We wish you much perseverance in achieving your goals.
Well, thank you very, very much. Really a great honor for me to have received this Jayhawk. Next time that President Obama is going to go for North Carolina, I'll tell him the Jayhawks. I will. No, thank you very much. This is for me extremely important, and be sure that these three objectives that you are telling me to follow with this award, they will be very much taken care of. And when we reach peace, after persevering, we will say thank you to the University of Kansas, and thank you for your hospitality and your generosity, and thank you for all you have done for me.